Sorry, screen was being weird. Sorry. So, who we have this week? Goldmund. Oh, sorry, my screen is being really irritating. So, Goldmund, he's got decades of digital experience helping businesses create a product from concept to delivery. He's been in various aspects of the process, from mapping user journeys to managing stakeholders and that relationship. Currently, he works for HoloMe, which is an augmented reality software developer. It's somewhere where you can send videos and they can broadcast it anywhere using augmented reality. And I can imagine with kind of this climate recently, with everyone being locked up, I can imagine it being quite popular. But I won't steal any more of his time. You're here to see him. So today, you can either go and address these quickly now, or you can incorporate them into your talk, your masterclass. But we had some questions or people talking about what they hope to learn from here and from this masterclass. And specifically, it was how you know if it will be a service design approach versus another one, and which deliverables are specific to service design. So, Goldman, I'll leave it to you. You can either answer them now or, again, incorporate them into your talk. And I'll hand it over to you. I'll stop sharing my screen and allow you to share yours.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'm going to jump this out of here and I'm going to start sharing my screen. Here we go. Give me a second. So we've got, I don't have your slides actually. Do you want to keep your slides up for a minute actually?
Yeah, sure.
And then I can talk over those and then will come over to me when I start the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, bear with me, come out of here. Okay, so the questions you've got, these are questions that went into the student group, from the student group in advance of the class. Myself and Giles talked about these a little bit. They're very similar questions to the ones we get a lot from people starting out in the industry. And really, the answer to both of them is kind of similar. So I'm kind of going to wrap them up together in the same thing. How do you know it will be a service design approach versus another? Number one, it depends what you've been hired to do. It's often just what the client has called you. There's a part of my presentation where I introduce myself, and I'm going to talk to you about, I get called all sorts of things at different jobs. What those titles mean at different companies can vary quite considerably, depending on where you are. So you don't necessarily know when it's going to be service design versus something else. I'll give you a quick look at a section of my portfolio that I use to map out my different methodologies and how I put them into different spaces. Some of you will be familiar with those already, since I've already taught you before. I can see you over there, Phoebe. Which deliverables are specific to service design. Again, don't worry too much about what the right deliverables are in any field. A more important question is what question are we trying to get the answer to? What do we need more information about? What hypothesis do we have that we need to prove or disprove? What problem are we trying to solve? Interestingly, I just posted an article by somebody else saying stop asking that question in the last couple of days, but it's a valuable question, but it needs to be tempered with a lot more information about what it is you're trying to achieve. So I'm probably going to leave those there for now, unless did anyone in the group actually put these particular questions forward and wants to ask anything specifically about them in detail now? No?
Oh, no worries.
I'm going to take that as a no, and I will cover elements of this as we go along. But the important thing is, don't worry so much. These questions, underlying these questions, is an insecurity about what are the right documents I should be using? What's the right approach? What's the right methodology? Now, there isn't one. When you go out into the field and you're actually working on stuff, you go, what is it actually that we're trying to achieve here? Who needs what? And how do we best go about that? So when I start a project, I go in and I'm really looking at what are the right techniques and tools to use to solve this particular problem in this particular context for this particular client. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so moving on, I'm going to move over to share my screen now, if you don't mind, Charles. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. And I'm just going to share my screen. over here and hit present. And you should, have you got me yet?
No.
Okay, bear with me. Share, that should be about to come in now. Here we go. Right, got it?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to move into here. Let's get you guys over there and present. Okay, everyone got what they need? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to move the things off the page. Okay, well, suddenly that's moving. Okay, so we're going to talk today. We're talking about service design, and in particular, I thought it'd be useful to talk about concepting with large stakeholder groups. One of the problems you'll have, let's talk about for a start the difference between UX and service design. To my mind, I've been doing UX since before it had a name. I was originally doing product management. I then did business analysis. I did information architecture. I've done the same sorts of jobs under UX, and increasingly now I'm doing them as a service designer. Now, what's different in service design is more full spectrum. UX was always full spectrum, but it kind of got hijacked to an extent by some of the ad agencies of the day. Had a lot of graphic designers sitting around, and they thought, well, we can do UX. Isn't that just about the look and feel? So unfortunately, user experience, which is quite a broad term, ended up being pigeonholed because of the marketplace into being about the look and feel. So when I go in, I was often having difficulty in different companies whereby I was trying to get involved with the proposition, because the problem with these pages wasn't always the elements on the page. It was the proposition. It's like, what is it you're trying to achieve as a company? And it doesn't matter how I rearrange these elements and what color I make them, you're still you've still designed something which is the solution to a problem that nobody's got. So what service design tries to do is start from the beginning, look at new ways companies can maybe can come up with ideas for how they can help companies out in coming up with new ideas that in areas that they're not necessarily expecting to have to explore usually. What we're moving from is a product-based industry, which was all very much push, push, push. You've got a number of products that you want to sell, and you go, I did some work for Calpol, for example, and Calpol, they were saying, here's our products. It was all very push, push, push. You had big posters saying, here's our product. What we're moving now to is a service-oriented and needs-oriented market, where what you're saying to people instead is, what problem do you have, and how can I help you solve it? Potentially, how can I help you solve an ongoing problem on an ongoing basis with perhaps a subscription? So for example, with Calpol, very simply, we went in and this was a project with JWT, and we went, instead of just saying, here's 5 bottles of medicine, find the right one for your kid, we said, well, what's wrong with your child? What are the symptoms? So you could search by symptom and then be led to the right product. You could also eventually, you could search by the age of your child and have a narrowed down list to what products were right for your baby. We also had forums, Mum's Magic, where you could do, where you could talk with other parents about things that worked for them and things that didn't. Very, very simple example of moving from a product push to a needs-based, how can we help you service. Okay, now, obviously, you're seeing increasingly subscription models building up where people are trying to sell you a razor that you buy every month, and we keep sending you one, and we come around and we clean it for you, and polish your windows and everything else. But everything in the sun, everything's now a service that you can sign up for. So service design, slightly different approach. To me, it is just full spectrum UX. That's what I will call it to you guys. Does that make sense to you guys? Is that what you're feeling? Okay, no, if nobody's got any comments, I suppose my thought is the distinction between the two is more likely to be defined by the company that hires you and what existing processes they already have. So what is it as a service designer at the company that you work for? In all likelihood, if you're with an agency, it's going to be you're going to be more involved with the proposition and the front end and the ideation if you're in service design, and you're going to be more involved with the nuts and bolts architecture of the surface layer of the product if you're in UX. And then there's going to be various other people at every other stage. I would encourage you to know as much as possible about the entire product development life cycle, called the PDLC for short. I learned that working with product management and business analysis. You have a whole life cycle of a product, and there are various things that need to happen at each stage. If you can make yourself more multi-skilled in all of those areas and know a bit about how each of those work, you find you can be a more valuable resource to more companies, whether you're in there as a full-timer or, like myself, a professional freelancer that moves from company to company on a project-by-project basis. Okay, so with that intro all out of the way, I'm going to dive in. So here we go, if we can get to the next page. So, about me, who is this guy? My name is Goldmund Byrne. I'm a UX and service designer, but as we've just talked about, sometimes they call me a consultant or an architect, an analyst, experience architect, user experience champion, customer experience architect, etc. I don't really care what they call me. I go in and see what needs to be done. What problems do I need to solve? I work out what resources are already on the team. Who on the team does what? I like to work with agile projects where you've got self-organizing teams that kind of come together and make great results. So as I say, I've taken jobs before where I didn't know the job title until they sent me the contract. I was on a project with EY Seren a couple of years ago, and it came back and I'd been hired as UX architect. We never discussed that. It doesn't really matter. More important is what problem are you trying to help this company solve. I also find it very difficult to read a job description for a new project and know exactly what that project's going to be until I get talking to them about what it is they're trying to achieve. So again, I would say don't get hung up on feeling that you have to know all the right words, all the right terminology, use all the right processes. All of this is still forming, and the exciting part about getting into this industry at the stage that you are is that you're still defining what it is. I've been doing this since the late 90s, and before stuff had a name, and it will probably have a new name again in another couple of years. So don't get hung up on whether you know all the right stuff. Don't keep feeling that you've got to read another book, do another course. It's great that you're taking action to be on a course now, but it's also important to know when the time is to just dive in and start doing the job. Go in, take the job, whether you're entirely ready for it or not, and just make sure you deliver. You know, I ordered hell a lot of books from Amazon and whatnot, and learned stuff as much as possible in my own time, as I needed it. I buy all my books on Kindle, so I've got everything with me everywhere. And if there's something you don't know or something you're not sure about and you suddenly need it, you're rarely going to need it on the spot. Somebody asks you a question that you're not familiar with, say, I don't have the info off the top of my head, but I'll get back to you this afternoon. And then go off, sit in your lunch, read your little chapter, and you'll probably find it's something you know that you've done elsewhere, but perhaps under a different name. There's a million different ways of doing the same thing in a million different ways. Don't feel underconfident or insecure just because you don't know the particular language that they're speaking at a particular company. And if anything's true, it's that every company, especially the ones where they're very solidly ingrained with full-time people that have been there for a long time, those guys will tend to think that perhaps that there's only one way of doing things. Whatever process they've got is the process. You'll find if you do, like myself, move from company to company, you'll find there's a lot of different ways of doing it. It's just a matter of finding where do you fit in, where do your team members fit in, and how do you get the best out of everybody. Anyone got any questions before I move on to the next section? Oh, okay, great. So what have I done? This is just letting you know a bit about what I do. This is a visual representation of my CV, just from a load of pinched LinkedIn logos. So big things on there that I've done. I suppose I did a couple of years with Specsavers, completely revamping their product listings, product details, some of their journeys, and book an appointment with an agency called Big Light. They're up in Kentish Town, some great guys. I went in there and they kind of had a trial with Specsavers for a few months. We went in, put together a program of work, and Big Light ended up taking them on. We turned that into a 2-year program of work, and Big Light ended up working with them for a long time into the future, and still to this day to a certain extent. I did a few years at News International, building them a social network on the scale of Facebook. Back in the days when you had to do all of that on your own. I was doing the IA, information architecture, all that sort of thing. I've done stuff with Diageo, Ernst & Young, BT Business. I've worked on the BT phone bill, the paper bill, so I'm not always working just on the screen. I did the EE phone bills to an extent behind glass, testing that with users, walking people through stuff. We've done user research, prototyping, gathering, facilitating workshops. We'll go through some of this stuff, but a whole bunch of different people. I am, just as an update, I'm no longer with Holomy. I got that. Thanks for the intro, Giles. But I've moved on now, and I'm looking for something new right now. I'm talking to a few people, but I've done my bit. And Holomy have just won #1 most innovative brand in London. So very proud of the work we did over there. But they're moving on to their next stage and trying to get moving into the next stage of funding. And they're moving on to the next phases of their project. So keep an eye on those guys there. I love them. They're really, really cool. I may well end up back there at some point, but for now I've done my piece. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about concepting, but with large stakeholder groups. Is this something, can I kind of get a show of hands who's done something like this before or thinks they know what I'm talking about? Nope. Okay. No problem. So what is concepting? Can you all anyone got any suggestions on what concepting is? Maybe you can chuck it into chat, and Giles, maybe you could call out some of the answers to us.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you want, you can turn your mic off as well. Be brave, guys. Come on.
Anyone got any thoughts?
Coming up with ideas, concepts for what the project solution could be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's just run with that one, because we started a bit late, so I'm going to maybe spend a little bit less time on questions than I intended to originally. So concepting, you're completely right, but what I'm talking about specifically today is generating lots of concepts that you might do, and then working through, which ones you're going to do, and doing that with a large group of people in a large organization. It's one thing if you get hired to do a job and you're, you've got a brief. Sometimes you're going to get called in and say, look, we don't know what we want to do, and we've got a load of different departments with different ideas about what we should do. How do we work out what we do next? Okay. So concepting is coming up with lots of product or service candidates we can explore, evaluate, and prioritize quickly, cheaply, and efficiently. And the value of those as an output is you can take those concept cards and socialize them around a business. Take them, and by socialize, I mean take them out around to people that weren't at your workshop and sell them and say, is this, we've got a bunch of these ideas. Which ones do you think work? Which ones do you not? Which ones will you get behind? You can also take them out to members of the public, to the users, to your aunt and uncle, to your neighbor. It really doesn't matter. It's a way of coming up with a bunch of stuff that you think might be of value to both you and the business and the customer that you can build. We'll talk a little bit more about what kind of axes we use to measure the relative value of these sorts of things in a few minutes. So the challenge you're going to have when you get in there is that your stakeholder group may be quite large, so big organization. And in the example we're going to talk about today, this was a large organization. You'll see who they are in a moment. Your group may be unaligned. They don't talk to each other. Nobody in the company knows what anybody else is doing. You'll hear about silos. You may well be familiar with that term. They may be competitive. They may be competing with each other. One department may want to do stuff that is not in the interest of another department. They might want to be better at it than everyone else. That's not necessarily a healthy mindset. They might be uncooperative. They might be wondering why they're at your workshop. They might be wondering why they've got to talk to you. You might not have a workshop at all. You might actually be kind of running around from office to office trying to get these people to agree whilst not in each other's company. I recommend strongly against that. We'll talk about that in a minute. They may be unfamiliar with each other. So you may have a bunch of people in the room that some of them work in Glasgow and some of them work in Aberdeen and some work in Brighton. Some of them may work in the Ukraine. You don't know. People can be from all over the place. Companies are often not very well aligned, and it is often one of the underlying problems with getting anything done in an organization like that. They might also be overwhelmed. They might think we've got so much to do. How do we possibly work out which things we should? And they may be warring with each other. I've put in a little picture of a food fight there. I hope it comes across. That's how it can be sometimes when it starts out. Your job, as much as anything else, is to take a company that is not really very well aligned and is not working in harmony and get them all thinking about the same things and considering each other's needs and the company's needs and the user's needs as well as their own. That's how you end up getting a good result in the end. So today's case study template that we're going to use is some work I did with the ACCA and a consultancy called Newt. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of those guys. I'll tell you who they are now in a moment. So the ACCA is the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. They call themselves the global body for professional accountants. So if you want to be an accountant, you've got to somehow or other go through these guys, and you can be a tutor for them. You can be a student. You can do ongoing developmental, what's the word, qualifications over time. So they're a very big organization, distributed geographically very, very diversely. People all over the country, all over the world, all talking about what do we as a company invest money in over the coming 5 years, and particularly the coming year, and very specifically over the next few weeks. Okay, so that's kind of the challenge. Newt's idea are a service design and experience consultancy that I've done a fair bit of work for a few times. You'll see I was brought in to help plan and co-present this workshop. So I did the planning. I'm going to show you later a little bit of how that planning looks on a kind of a spreadsheet, how I do it. You may end up doing it differently, but it'll give you an idea of how I plan things. So number one, when you've got a lot of different people to deal with and they're all over the place, number one, I would say try and get them all into the same room if you can. So for that, you want a good space, you want a good location, you want good coffee, and if you can, good food. Now, in this case, this was the ACCA. Once a year, these guys hire Newt to help them plan their roadmap for the coming year. So they got us this space. I'll pull my mouse over. Which is, if anyone recognizes, this is Charing Cross Station, and there's a hotel directly above it. So a brilliant location. You want to look for somewhere that everyone can get to easily, neutral ground. Remember, everyone's coming from everywhere. So if you do it in one person's office, that's potentially not necessarily as neutral for other departments as it could be. People feel like that if sales feel like they're on marketing's territory, you might not get as open a response from your group as you would in a more neutral space. I realize you haven't always got the money to get these kind of places, but certainly find a good space. It's not necessarily important that you've got an expensive space, but it is important that you've got a good neutral central one that everyone can get to reasonably conveniently. Or if it inconveniences everyone in the same way, that's probably just as good. Also gets people out of their everyday mindset as well, gets them thinking about fresh ideas. Now, as much as this was a lovely location, you might have a look at this and think there's actually some problems with this room. I would much prefer a modern room with glass windows all the way around, because I had to get them to take down a bunch of portraits of old masters and, you know, all sorts on the walls around here. And the Dido rails got in the way of putting up paperwork. They didn't want us to put blue tack on the walls, so we had to turn up with massive rolls of brown paper. That's a good pro tip. Always have those with you everywhere, so you can post-it note stuff onto there, blue tack it there, roll it up and take it back to the office to analyze with you later. We managed to get there in the end, and we borrowed a whole load of clipboards from all around the facility. Moving on from there, so your first thing you want to do is to gather ideas. Then you want to narrow them down. That's broadly what you're doing at a workshop where you're gathering and elaborating on concepts. Okay, so you want to explore options by identifying problem areas. So here you can see some of what we had. You can do this in a number of different ways, which I'm going to list. Here we've got phases like set up courses. You've got steps like plan courses or recruit students. You've got customer needs. I need to be able to advise my students on which exams they should take. And then from this, you're trying to identify opportunities for something that your company can afford to build, that the users want, that is of value to the business. Make sense? So dimensions you can use in this endeavor is, you can look at what phases there are. You can look at what steps there are, what the customer needs are. You can identify potential opportunities, and you can look at these through different lenses. I don't know if anyone knows what I mean by a lens, but a lens is just something that slightly changes your perspective when you look at a particular problem. So, for example, we've got an item here which is planned courses. In that case, I might want to look at that through the lens of an international student. What's different about the problem that an international student has from a local student? Or what if we're trying to solve that problem in China versus in Australia? What are the different things? How does it vary? What about through the lens of remote work versus campus work? Yeah. So you're always looking for, again, there's no strict answer to this. You need to kind of have a think in advance and come up with ways of helping keeping the creative juices of the group flowing well. Anyone, a lens is making sense enough that I can move on? Can I get some nodding heads, or yeah, or do you want me to cover a bit more? Okay, great stuff. So what you're trying to do then is show them how to break things down. So it's important that you know what these guys need to do at the end of the day. What are the various activities they're going to have to go through? You want to choreograph these quite tightly if you can. I will show you my plan for this workshop later in the session, and you'll see it's literally planned minute by minute. I know what's happening every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes. I've got it in a Google Sheet, and I know when I'm switching presenters from me over to Amanda back to myself, and it's literally it's highly choreographed, and I'm watching my watch. Basically, whoever's not presenting at the time is watching their watch on behalf of the other person and going around and helping everybody else out. You can do this on your own, but it really helps if you've got more than one person to work on it. We also, on this one, we also had 2 interns and a graphic designer all helping us out, and one of the owners of the company, just in case we needed anything else. So it was a quite heavy project with a lot of people in there. Some quite intense workshops over about 10 days. So next up, once you've gathered some ideas, you're going to need to prioritize them. There's Amanda there. You can kind of see, this is a whole board full of, you've kind of got some phases up here in orange. You've got some steps here in green. Under there, so this, who's heard of an experience map? Have you worked with experience maps at all? Yeah. Experience map is just a way of laying out, so you've got an overall top level activity. Under that, you've got steps. So let's say an activity is, I'm getting ready to leave in the morning. So, leave for work might be made up of get up, have shower, make breakfast, and, shave, put on coat, leave. Yeah. So those activities, those sub-activities, those overall steps might be, get everything I need to leave. So, and that can be made up of the further steps of find keys, put on coat, put lunch in bag, put bag on back, go to office. Now, around that, you can look at, well, what opportunities are there to improve this? Where does this normally go wrong? What can we do better? So all this wall is a load of concepts that people have put up. So if you just pick out this bit, we've got a particular step, some ideas for what people might do. And then we've started in pink, we've started to say what opportunities they are. And in orange, we're talking about, what questions we might have or what we might want to add on to it. Once you start coming up with these ideas, you're going to want to start trying to prioritize them. Now, there's various different ways you can do that. One is the obvious kind of Moscow stuff of must have, should have, could have, that sort of thing. But I've put together a little bit more for that. So here's a concept prioritization matrix that I personally use. This will look familiar to some of you who've been taught by me before over at Flatiron, but there's an extra part on here that won't have been there last time. which is how well are we currently doing at this. So this is benchmarking, which is more specific to service design and not so much UX. So you've got so we'll come up with a particular idea. So we might say we want to improve how we onboard students, okay? So to begin with, we might say, how well are we doing at this right now? And the scale for that would be very well, badly, or very badly. I've put some crude marks here. On the wall, I would mark this as check marks. So 2 checks, we're doing it very well. 1 check, we're doing it quite well. 1 cross, we're doing it badly. 2 crosses, we're doing it very badly. So very simple. But what I will do, and you'll see it somewhere on some of these images as well, you'll see that I've stuck some of this stuff up on the wall around the room so that people are familiar with what they need to, with what, when you break them out into groups, they know what it is they need to do without having to come back and ask you all the time. Make sense? Okay, so the various dimensions I tend to use are benchmarking, how well are you doing right now? What's the value of this particular concept or idea? And this is, at this stage, you're only working at card level. You've just got, you know, I've got an idea that we might do this. We've got this problem that we might solve in this way. So at this stage, you're trying to gather loads of these. You're getting the room to think about them. Everyone's firing them up on cards, putting them on the wall. And you're trying to narrow down the 100 things that come out initially into maybe 10. Yeah. So this is very crude, high level prioritization to begin with, which you will continue to refine using these same tools. But questions you can ask yourself is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's the value to the user? So how much value do users feel this would give them? What's the value to the business itself or your client? How much value would the business get from this? Scale of 1 to 10. What's the effort or the complexity or the cost for you as a company to design it? It might be very complicated. It might be really, really useful to the users, but it might take you 3 years to solve the problem. So is it small, medium, or large? And then what is the effort, complexity, or cost to deliver or implement this thing? Which means at this stage, you probably want technical people in the room as well, who can give you a finger in the air, probably just the head of the department rather than the engineers at this point, because we're trying to stay high level. But what we're trying to say is, what we're looking for in the long term is, if you want to think about that for a second, I'm not going to ask you to call out, but think for a minute about what would be the ideal problem, what would be the ideal looking chart here for you to kind of put something at the top of your development list. I'm just going to give you maybe 30 seconds to look at these values and have a think, and then I'll tell you what my answer is. Okay, not enough time? Just wanted to give you a chance to look at them. So what we're really looking for is something that we currently do very badly. So if we improve it, it's going to be high impact. That is a very high value to the user, so a 10. That's also a very high value to the business, because we can maybe earn something out of doing it, or get some loyalty from it, or, you know, encourage people to come back to us, or build more trust. There's a lot of different levels on which it's not just about money. It's, you know, it's about value, and value can come in a number of different ways. Beware of companies that measure things purely and simply on financial measures, because it's probably going to end up being quite a difficult project if you're in UX or service design. So what's the effort and complexity cost? So we're looking for something we do badly, that's a lot of value to the user and the business, that isn't going to cost us a lot of time or money to build, and isn't going to cost a lot, to design, and isn't going to cost a lot of time or effort to build. That's your perfect number one thing that you can do, because we can go, right, we've got this thing that we do really badly that we can fix in a week, that isn't going to cost much, and I already know how to solve it. That's the magic project. So when companies are going, we've got all these things to do, I don't know, which one should we do? You're looking to help them identify these things, and put them in a logical order that it makes sense for them to deliver in. Ideally, you want to keep delivering value to your customers and your users as quickly as possible, as often as possible. So looking back here, you'll get a closer look later, but there are a wealth of things. You can see some of the benchmarking here, yeah? So these are all columns. So on here, we've got something that we do well. We've got something we do badly over here. We've got some measures of how high, how important is it? Is this something that's of high value to the users? I wouldn't worry too much about the particular stickers we've used on the day. It's just important that you go through in passes covering these different dimensions and say, okay, what's the value of this to the users? So you maybe give them something in one color and you say, or maybe you get them to rank them 1 to 10. Depends whether you're just trying to get an overall score or if you're trying to narrow down from a list of 10 to a list of 3. Again, be flexible. This isn't about sticking rigidly to a process or adhering exactly to the rules or saying, well, you guys, the numbers say you should do this one. It's about stimulating conversation. It's about getting people that don't normally talk to each other to talk to each other, about getting them to communicate amongst themselves and to just be more open and actually a little bit of healthy arguing where somebody tries to say, well, this is the most, it's quite useful to use ranking rather than just scales. If you can get people to say, well, which of these, put these in the order of 1 to 10, rather than, because they'll tend to come in and say, well, all of these are high value, or all of these are the most important thing. So if you can instead say, okay, you can only use each number once. 1 to 10, what's the most important thing? And going down the scale, what's the next most important thing? With numbers like that, you can really start to build, you can get them to design their own roadmap, which is really what you're trying to facilitate here. So I've got an evaluation guide here. I'm going to share a copy of that spreadsheet with you at the end of the day. If you use it, I'd ask that you credit me because it is proprietary, but I don't mind you using it as students. And yeah, I'm including it here because I'm going to distribute the PDF at the end, or it will be shared on by Giles. So these instructions will be in there as well. You can make your own. In fact, I'll probably just distribute this and you can kind of make your own little spreadsheet from it. It'll give you the idea. But I wanted to throw that in for you. So next up, you've got a bunch of concepts, but you want to explore them. You've got an idea of which ones you should explore. So depending on how much space you've got, what we did here is literally cover every wall in the room all the way around with a bunch of concepts. And we got people to explode them into more detail. So you say, okay, what are the opportunities really around each of these concepts? Which are the most important ones? So all along you're guiding through various layers of what's the most useful one? What's the most important one? What can we make the most money from? Let's look at it through a different lens. What about if I don't have any money and I want to take that course? What are the options if you're not in the same location as somebody else? All of those things, and that's really where your creative thinking comes into play. There's no right or wrong answer, but doing a bit of prep here in advance and having an idea can help. Over time, with experience, you'll get a better sense of how to help steer them in terms of lenses. But what you're really trying to do is encourage conversation, because you're really just facilitating them on deciding what their roadmap is. You're not deciding what it is for them. You may have ideas, chuck them on the board like everybody else is. Don't just, you're not there to make your design or felt. You're trying to get them to work out what it is between them. Because ideally, if you can get the whole company aligned and to agree about what it is they should do, you're going to have a much easier project when you start to get into discovery and implementation and delivery in the end. So I would say break the teams up, move and mingle, keep them moving around the room. Initially, maybe kind of get them to stand in a line and put them into groups. They'll all stand with their friends and the people they know. Break them out of their comfort zone. Start taking 2 people from, groups of 4 were about right here, 4 or 5. But then we'd grab 2 people from the groups and go make them stand with the marketing people. And, people from legal had to go and sit with the sales guys. Now, what that did was kind of really get people looking at things from a new perspective and questioning things. So you say you really need this, but we really need that. What we're trying to do here is kind of give people an improved empathy, understanding, and appreciation of each other's problems. You're not just there to fight for your concept, which is kind of how the day starts. And you're winning when those groups of people start going, okay, yeah, we really did want this, but I can see how it's more important that for the business and for the users that we deliver thing X prior to that. Does that make sense to everyone? So let them know what you expect of them. So here we've got an example deliverable. This is a typical one that new users, they can look a lot of different ways. You've got a concept card. So you're looking for essentially a snappy title, a sketch of what the thing does that represents what the concept's about or what it might look like, a little description of what it is, and 5 bullet points, which could be features, could be benefits, doesn't really matter. Make sense to everyone? So, example of a concept card. Each concept summarized in one sketch, max 5 bullets. Above that, you've got snappy title, quick description. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? Now, you're going to be asked to do one of these at the end. That's going to be your workshop task, is to break up into groups. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. Giles will deal with who goes into what room later on. We may put you all in together. I may or may not be in the room, but just have a look at that. The next time you see this on your workshop task, it's just going to be a spreadsheet that describes these 5 things. And to the right, you're going to say what they are. You're not going to, don't worry, you're not going to have to sketch. I know people get nervous about that. I'm just going to get you to describe what the sketch might be. Everyone comfortable with that? So we can move straight into it when we need to? Great. Okay, so you want to tell them what you expect of them and how to do it. So you can see here, I've got examples. So you can see that kind of little benchmarking thing over here. What are we doing very well, quite well, badly, or very badly? Yeah, we had a glossary of touch points. What's a customer need? What's the storyboard? Remember, you're going to have people potentially from legal, from marketing, from sales. You're going to have people from departments that know nothing about you and what you do. And you don't want them to feel stupid. You really want to kind of encourage an atmosphere of play where everyone's ideas are good, everyone feels comfortable, and nobody's feeling, oh, I don't know the terminology, I don't know the lingo, so I'll just step back. Everyone can have ideas, everyone works for the company, and everyone has a good idea of what the business should do. Beware of that as well. Often you get hired in both UX and service design, and some people in the company think it's your job to tell them what they should do. Really, it's your job to help them unlock what it is they should be doing. A lot of the information that's needed is in their heads. They just don't know how to prioritize it. They don't know how to get aligned between their different departments. They don't know how to ask their customers, what's the most useful thing we could do for you? And often everyone's pulling in different directions. So all of these things, and this is common in UX and service design and lots of other areas as well, is that you are trying to create an aligned vision that everyone can work to. I can remember when I was teaching at Flatiron last year, various different groups working out of alignment, pulling in different directions, and there is a marked difference in the output of large groups of people that are all working together towards the same goal, and groups where you've got people pulling in different directions. That will ring a bell to those of you that have worked out in the field for any significant length of time. It's usually one of the biggest problems. And in fact, often you can end up being company therapist as a UX or a service designer. Your job isn't just, wireframes, prototypes, blueprints, all those sorts of things. Your job is to kind of get the company aligned around the same things. So you want to give them a template. You can see I've used a very simple one here. This is literally a page of A3 that's got those 5 key areas in yellow Post-it notes. Catchy title, write it in there. 1-line description, a sketch, 5 key points, and I did on this occasion add the lens of markets to this particular example. This was just, we've got different markets. So how does this work in China as opposed to the UK? What's different about when we deliver this in Ireland as opposed to Germany? Because all those markets had their own particular idiosyncrasies that you wanted to consider. So you give them a template. Sorry, I've gone forward a page. You give them a template, and then you have them fill it out. So you can see people milling about. A good workshop, people are busy, they're noisy, and you're getting in amongst them. You don't just drop them in there and stand back. You get you and your team walking around going, right, who's got ideas? You might also want to take, you've asked for 5 key bullet points. All right, what you're probably going to find is these guys are going to give you 12 bullet points. Now, at some point, you're going to have to take these back to your office and analyze them. So the more you can do to get clarity and simplify those into 5 bullet points on the day, the simpler your job is going to be when you get back to base. It's also going to be easier for them to pitch it, which is the next stage. So over here, you can see this is a filled out example of the same thing. I've also got a slightly more advanced version of this template. I mean, this is literally on the day we didn't have time to print, so I wrote those out. You'll see later an example where I've printed this in portrait with some basic template information there to help you out. Okay. So here we go. So you have them pitch their ideas to each other. Just going to pull you guys over onto the screen here. You can probably see yourselves as well. So you have them pitch their ideas to each other. You've got various people that have been in teams around the room. You're going to get them to nominate someone. Let's stop and talk about breaks here for a minute. I say to any company, anywhere, doing anything, never try and get a group of people to do anything for more than 90 minutes at a time. So I always have 90 minutes. That's about, typically research shows, that's the longest you can count on people concentrating and focusing. If you try and push them past that, and you may have a client on your ear saying, oh, look, keep them in there. We don't get them together very often. Just keep them going. People will start to leave the room and just go to the bathroom. People will start checking their phones, checking emails. You will lose the good grace and the goodwill of the room if you overwork it. All right, so no more than 90 minutes at a time. So at this stage, between everybody having put these concepts together and them actually going up to present, they'll have had a 5 to 15 minute break to talk about who's going to present it, how do I present it, and that gives them a little bit of time. So in advance of your break, give them time to prep for that. Once they've presented to each other, you want to get them to dot vote on their ideas. Okay, so we've got over here, dot voting. Is everyone familiar with that? So basically you give people dots to spend. So we've ended up with a whole load of ideas around the room. You get everyone to walk around after they've pitched, you get everyone to walk around, give them some time, probably on the coffee break. This is where I would say you've got 15 minutes, grab a coffee, take a walk around the walls, look at the ideas, see what jumps out at you, and spend your 20 dots on whatever takes you fancy. Make sense? Can everyone hear me okay, yeah? Just might move this slightly to the left so I can get in a bit closer. Okay, so you get them to spend their dots. Watch out for cheeky people from sales departments in particular that come back and tell you they didn't get any dots and can they please have some more, and they just want to vote double for their project that they're really trying to push through. Watch out for people. So have your dots counted in advance and cut up in advance of the workshop. Get them to line up and get them to come up and take their dots and sit back down again, because it can get very confusing. Who did I give dots to and who didn't I? People say, oh, I didn't get any. And then they've got 40 dots and they can skew the output. It doesn't happen often, but it can happen, and it does happen. So be aware of that one. Okay. Next up, we've got, at this stage, you want to review the current scores and measurements. So again, it doesn't really matter. I've given you a page earlier that tells you what dimensions on which you can measure stuff. Which ones you use depends on what problem you're trying to solve on the day. But essentially, it's always about what can we build that people want, that everyone's going to be happy with, and we can all make that. What can we build that tech can do, that I can afford, that we can make money from, that customers want? What's the win-win for me and the customer and technology and anyone else that's a stakeholder in it? You're looking for the biggest wins, and that's going to give you, if you score all that up and you do it with numbers and you rank stuff rather than letting them free vote, and by that I mean, instead of saying score all of these 1 to 10, you don't want to end up with 5 10s. Yeah, so you say rank them in order of what's the highest value to the customer. This is the same if you're working with user stories in UX or in service design, or later on if you want to say, get them to say what is the most important piece of functionality we can deliver. You always want to get them to work in a tower. So you've got something that's at the top. You get people from different departments trying to do this, and they will start by trying to put stuff side by side. And they go, what's going on here? Which one is the priority? Well, they're kind of both a priority. No, give me a tower. Give me a rank. So rankings are your friend when you're trying to get people to agree, and it kind of forces conversation between people that wouldn't normally have them. And the beauty of this, if you can get everyone in a room, is whereas if you're seeing that very senior C-suite manager in a meeting in their office, and you're trying to explain to them that, you know, the VP of sales wants this, which conflicts with what they want in marketing, they're going, well, you know, tell him to go take a long walk off a short bridge or a short pier, you know, and that's easy for them to say when they're just talking to you in their office. When they're in front of their colleagues and co-workers, and you put the two of them up against that wall and tell them to put what's the most important one, it's an amazing thing happens where they start going, oh, they start out both trying to compete and both put their thing at the top, and then they have to talk about, well, actually, what's the bigger picture? What's actually important to everybody, not just us? What's important to our users? What's going to make the most money? What does it make sense? You can move to dimensions like, what does it make sense to deliver first? If we deliver this now, I can give you more money to do that a little bit later on. So these are the kind of these are the creative juices you're trying to get flowing, and getting people becoming friends and allies instead of adversaries and enemies. Okay, so at this point you're playing back. You should at this point kind of have some scores. Giles, how are we doing for time?
Yeah, good.
Okay, cool. At this point, you're playing back the leading candidates and you're entertaining challenges. So here you can see we're starting to get a bit of a scoreboard going. These are starting to look like our priority concepts. Does that make sense? Is that clear enough to see? So we've narrowed down from everything that was around all of the walls, and we've narrowed it down to, well, look, here's what it's looking like. This is the stuff that you guys are saying is important and is of value. What do you think? You know, is this the right order? Is there stuff we haven't considered? And at this point, people will say, yeah, I can see how on the board it looks like that's the most important thing, but actually we can't do it until we've done number 4. So we should deprioritize that. It makes sense to do that later. Or maybe that is the most important thing, but really thinking about it now that we talk about it, because you're opening up to the room now. So this might have just been worked on and streamlined by small groups of 3 to 4 people. If you then get the whole room talking, new things are going to come in as well, new pieces of information. It's always about diving down, drilling down, and getting more and more information. At this stage, we're still really only at concept level. But we're trying to work out very quickly what are the things we can do quick, fast, and easy that are high value, and get a list of things that are maybe not so quick and fast and easy but are high value that we can schedule for later. Or maybe what's the cost of research of these particular areas? You might want to take, what can we do in the next few weeks, right? Well, that's the top 5 things. But what can we do over the next while? But we need to do 6 weeks of research to get started on them. Those things might be your last 5. So I think we were doing 2 different kinds of workshops for this particular piece of work. One was for the persona of the tutor, and the other was from the persona of the student. So by that I mean we were doing what are the concepts and ideas that would help the students of the ACCA, and what are the concepts and ideas that would help the tutors in providing the education or certifications to those people. So again, you've opened up the room, you're asking people questions. So basically, once people have kind of come up, once you've got a list, I think on this case, in this particular example, we're on the first day, which I think was students. We did students one day, tutors another, doesn't really matter. But you take your list of, I think we were looking to get between 5 and 10 decent concepts by the end of the day. We then take those back to the office and we work out, okay, what do these things mean? So you can see here, this template, this is actually from day 2. So what I can tell you is this stuff is day 1, where I showed you we just used a piece of A3 with post-its. By day 2, for I think the tutor workshop, we'd managed to put together just a piece of A4 with some literal wireframe sections on it. So this was snappy title, short description, sketch, 5 key benefits. Does that make sense? Can everyone see that in reasonable detail? So we've come back from the workshops, gone back to our own offices and facilities, and we now have, you know, maybe 8 of these. I think in this case for the second day we had 6. which we'll see in a moment. So I'll give you kind of a wider view of all of those in a moment. But you want to take any notes. So you've got to rationalize whatever those guys gave you using any notes that they've scribbled on the back of napkins and everything else, probably smeared with their lunch, and start adding a bit of content in there that says, you can see here, someone's kind of drawn out a bit of a journey. But then when I've looked at it, I've kind of gone, well, how's this journey mapped to the concepts that we've got? So I'm putting different numbers on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm starting to look at these. How do these fit into an overall narrative? How can I take all these concepts and use them to tell a story? Or how do I present them in an order that makes sense? So whilst they've given us priority orders, that's kind of to get us down to 6 concepts out of 30. When I'm playing back the concepts, I don't necessarily want them to be in a suggested order of priority. So what I might do instead is quite often I'll try to use sequential or chronological ways of presenting things that tell a story. So in this case, it might be, what have I got as number 1? So an orientation guide, those different concepts. So I've gone, that was at number 1. What's number 2? Optimize my performance. So I've tried to think, what is the natural life cycle of these concepts? Where do they fit into the journey, the experience of the service that these guys have? So what is the service? I'm a student, and I'm just joining. Well, obviously first I want to be oriented. Later I might want to check my performance and manage it. I want to be introduced to those tools early. So ultimately we're going to come up with a concept deck here that we're going to socialize, right? So I might present that in the order that makes logical sense, in the same way as you would in UX or information architecture, where you don't break people's mental models of things. You want to kind of you want to put things in an order that makes sense to people. If you're doing a list of bullet points, they should make sense in a natural order that doesn't make people jump from place to place in a process. You know, you could say, it might be the back of a piece of software, yeah? You don't put easy installation at the end and then go into the features. You say easy installation, easy to use, nice saving features. You put it kind of in the order that these things happen. In the same way, the order you want to put your concept deck in could be informed by either its place in a product life cycle, an experience life cycle, or in a story narrative that you build that is going to help you present those to get them into people's heads quickly. So over here, you can now see this is us on day 2 with a list of, you can very faintly see, this is number 6, number 5, number 4, and number 3, and so on down to 1. Yeah, so these are our 6 concepts in the order that I was going to put them in the PDF when I sent them back to the group. And literally just taking this one here, all you've got there is, you've got what we said. We've got a snappy type, we've got a catchy name for it, a description, a sketch, and some bullets. Now my job is and our job as a group was to rationalize all that down into something sensible that made sense that we can put on a card and dress up a little bit more in a slightly glossier form that's more presentable to the organization at large. These are the ones we did on this occasion. The style is kind of very much up to you. It doesn't really matter, but you can, an example here, I think the one I was going to pick out to show you was the notifications and alerts. So to read that to you a little bit more closely, it was, one of the concepts was to have customizable notifications and alerts to keep yourself up to date with any changes made by the company. So we've got a guy on the tube or the bus receiving messages on notifications saying, your exam's been moved forward from the 5th of May. Do you want to add that to your calendar? So this was something helpful, that there was an existing problem that had been identified, that it was hard to keep track of courses and what you had to do by when. So we came up with ideas here. I can't read them here. It really doesn't matter, but we had, let's see, customize your notifications preference with what interests you. So it doesn't matter. It's like, what's good about this feature? And remember, what you're aiming for is not something that's technically fancy. You're really looking for something that you could take to the canteen at lunchtime in a mixed business, a mixed company building, and just take it up to a stranger and say, and they should be able to kind of get it off the top of their heads. So you want this to be less technical rather than more. You don't need to be a genius to know how to do this. Don't worry about what's the exact language. You know, what is it? It's notifications and alerts. Let's see. Let's take a look at another one. We've got performance tracker. We got quick answers. Okay. So quick answers. What is it? So that's a snappy title. Quick answers. What is it? It's a quick way to get answers to technical questions and FAQs. Features are, it's got a search tool to help you quickly find what you want. It's got a keyword search, etc., etc. You get the idea? That makes sense to everybody? Okay, brilliant. So from here, you're going to socialize this, get buy-in, by which I mean go out to the rest of the company, say, look, and what we ended up with here from 2 days of work is I think we had 8 concepts for students and 6 concepts for tutors, or the other way around, doesn't matter. We end up with about 14. Again, I didn't go in with a fixed idea. People might come up to me and say, well, what's the right number of concepts to have? Well, if you've only got 2 good ideas, 2 is the right number. You know, it's the same with personas. I always say, you know, how many personas should we do? Well, how many different design decisions do you need to make? How much of a difference, how many people's eyes do you need to look at this through? Certainly in this case, a student's experience of a course is very different from a lecturer's experience of the course. So there's a very strong and solid need there for 2 different personas. So we broke it up into 2 groups. We were prepared to have between 5 and 10 of each. We came up with 6 strong contenders for one, 8 strong contenders for the other, and that was it. So next up, this is really just, don't worry about the detail here, but I'm just kind of dusting off and we're very nearly done. Once you've got those concepts and you've brought them around the business, you then are going to end up at a stage where you've decided, you know, which of those you're going to pursue or not pursue. You're not necessarily going to do all of them. So you're going to come back, but very soon you're going to have, right, we're going to do this notification alerts. Okay, and at that point, you're going to need to start planning it into an actual roadmap, which is the point at which you start breaking things down further into user stories, or jobs to be done if you're using the Google framework. Depends whichever one you're comfortable with. All of these things, there's a million different ways of doing it. Don't be intimidated when you go to companies when they're using this title or that title. It's all the same shit, different flavor is basically what I say to people. I've seen it done many different ways under very different names in different places. People get very precious and particular about this because they've learned one thing from a book and they think this is the only way to do it. A job to be done is really just a user story with context added. You know, all these different things. If we've got time during Q&A, I don't know how we're doing. I will, let me just check my watch actually. There we go. Yeah, we're kind of eating into our time because we started a bit late. But I can show you the elements of user experience. We show you there's loads of different activities you can do at the various stages of a project. It doesn't matter which ones you do, just pick the right ones that suit what problem you're trying to solve at the time. So from here, we've got maybe 5 of these concepts back and we say, right, we're going to do these 5. So you're going to have epics at that stage. An epic, there's no time really here to address what that is, but I presume most of you out there will know what Agile is and what an epic story is and how you break an epic story down into short, measurable, achievable user stories that are quite specific. But your epic is going to be your concept. You're going to break that down into user stories. So here is an example, unrelated. This isn't from this particular example because we only took this to concept card level. But somewhere else, I was working with Decanter and Time Warner, their wine tasting magazine, for a wine competition that they run. We've come up with a list of prioritized stories that we wanted to deliver over time. We asked them for the top 15. They wanted a top 30. We said fair enough, and we gave them their top 30. But we knew that by the time they'd done those top 15, they'd already need to have their checkbooks out for about £1.5 million. So it's like when people come up with ideas that are more than you got time for, just put them on board, park them, make sure they're recorded. You'll get back to them later. You really only want to worry about what's the next few things we're going to do. From there, you're actually getting into sprint planning. And this is some work I did with Specsavers where I was doing the product listings. So show me a page with loads of glasses. And then I'm going to click on one of those. I'm going to look at product details. So show me a pair of glasses and stuff like that. Again, I haven't printed this so you can read it exactly, but you've got basically 2 epic stories there, which are, I need to create a specification and a set of wireframes and whatever else for a product details page. What should be on it? I've ended up with a bunch of design goals on there saying we want to see high spec glossy images that we can rotate, that I can try on my face. I want to see the catalog number, and we've got those in a prioritized order. If you work through these things in a sensible, methodical approach, these creative fields that people think are all about scratchy chin, you know, arty exercises, which is what a lot of the agencies are selling. They're selling graphic design and calling it service design and creative thinking. There's actually can be a lot more science to it. If you use a bit of creative thinking, you're still having creative goals, which are, I need to achieve these things, but you're using some kind of logic that different departments can get behind to benchmark what should be done in what particular order. So with that done, we're supposed to have Q&A now. Giles, over to you. Do you want to do questions, or do you want to launch straight into exercise? To be honest, I don't think the exercise is going to take long, so I don't mind if we take 5 minutes here if people have questions.
Yeah, I agree. If anyone's got any questions, feel free, take your mic off. Oh, Ola's already straight in there. Excellent. So hold on. So Ola says, Ella, do you want to ask it? It kind of gets a little bit more interaction that way.
As well.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ola. So basically 2 things. One, if I've worked in companies where you have the top bods, as you say, which is great keeping it top level, but when you actually come down to it, like the developers are like, this is going to take us forever. So you mentioned having like a technical person in the room. Would you not recommend that it's like more than one technical person maybe? Or
Look, if I could get the entire company in a room, you know, in a space that would work, I would. So I'm always in favor of more people rather than less in this kind of an exercise. You're completely right. The thing is, I suppose you're trying to strike a balance between having too many people that are going to get too specifically into the detail and start solutionizing too quickly. I get a little bit antsy about this. You will always hear in meetings, someone's like, oh, well, we're getting into the solution now. And it's like a clever thing to say that everyone says, but there's no harm in a little bit of that, you know, because you're kind of trying to explore an idea. And you've got to remember that different people in the room think in different ways. And if you've got people in the room that are used to solutionizing, that's the spin that they put, that's how they answer your question. And that needs to be, to my mind, as valid and accepted as the kind of, you know, the floppy head marketing executive that's going, oh yeah, guys, it should just be nice and green. You know, like that's just their different ways of expressing. It's their take on the problem. All these things are just different. When I'm doing all these different artifacts, they're often just the same information viewed from a slightly different angle. So, you know, one person's market driver is another person's, you know, line of code, or what color it's going to be, or what font we should use, or what feelings that emotes in the user. This is why we kind of try and congregate around user needs and user experience and service requirements rather than business goals, you know, because you go, what does this need to do? What is the win for everybody? And the fantastic thing, if you can get a company to work this way, and it does take a lot of work. I'm not saying this is easy to go in. You need a lot of backup to kind of get the level of, to get a room like that filled like I did, and almost shut down a company for, you know, a few days. Takes a lot of effort. And I say I did, I've got to give credit here to, like, this is the great guys over at New, whose business this typically is. I was just in there helping out and planning that workshop and helping running it. But those guys do that every year. They had the level of trust with that organization to get all those people in the room. So I was lucky enough to walk into that. I just had to plan what to do with them. Often I'm in there as a one-man band, and I've just got to go, I've got to sell why it's a good idea to get those people in the room. So again, there's no particular answer. You want to look at what are the things we're likely to be coming up against and wanting to explore and discuss. And from that point of view, what people do we need in the room? Who's going to be useful? You kind of want to keep a good balance between people who are going to, basically who's going to add value to that meeting and help you get the right bunch of concept cards. I've got no sort of hierarchical view in terms of, you know, you know, this is just for the management. You know, don't send me the grants. I don't care. In fact, I'm more comfortable a lot of the time down there with the resources that have to deliver it. And I am often one of them myself. You know, as long as I've been doing this, I was working on Holomy recently. I was working 12-hour days, pumping out wireframes and interactive prototypes. And I was on stand-up calls every morning, you know, so sometimes I'm facilitating like this in a very high level. Sometimes I'm literally down, I'm out on the street. I walk around South Africa with around Johannesburg with a clipboard, asking people questions. I might actually quickly move you over and show you a couple of other things. I want to show you a bit of, this might be useful while we're talking about this. I said I'd cover a bit of this. So this is just from my own portfolio. I've got a presentation I give to new, a brown bag session I do with companies. It's Jesse James Garrett's Elements of User Experience. I'm going to do another version of this myself where I'm going to turn this upside down, do it in a pyramid instead, because my point is do an upside down pyramid, in fact, because most of the activity should be happening at this level and here. And as you narrowed it, so strategy in terms of today is what is it we're generally trying to achieve as a company? So from that point of view, I'll be looking at, you know, a vision statement for the company or for the product. Who's it for? What's it called? What does it do? What's unique about it? Then I'm going, okay, what kind of things could we do? We can do features. We can either do that from the top down, say, okay, we're the ACCA and we've got 5 sections in our website called A, B, C, and D. What happens under each of those? That's top down feature decomposition or elicitation. I can go from the bottom up. I can say just what are ideas we could do, and we'll find somewhere to put them later. Yeah. This is with Benecol, the kind of cholesterol lowering drink. Where are people actually landing on your website using Google Analytics? What's most popular? What isn't? You're doing personas, out on the street research, running around asking people, you know, what is it you need? What could Nedbank do for you that they're not doing already as a family? You've got to, you know, affinity model, all that stuff. You can co-create with users. You can get people to, you can do one-on-one interviews with people. Who's immediately financially dependent on you? Who are the secondary people and the tertiary? There are various different things you can do at different levels. Co-creation, I'm just going to whiz through these. Service design, we're looking at various different columns, again, of ideas that we're scoring in different ways. And we're talking to different, I was there with Air Berlin and Newt again, and Excelia. What is it that Excelia can build for you that Air Berlin needs that can afford to be done and can be done quickly and gives everyone value? This is Specsavers. This is how we narrow it down. Okay, what is it people need? They need to see, they've got a terrible, right now, a very unclear product listing page. What can we do to improve that? Experience mapping, process mapping, user stories. Again, you need various different people in here to answer these different questions, and they're all going to have a different say on that. From there, I think, was there another element of here? Here's an example. This was the product details page that the product listings page that we ended up with. So we wanted people to be able to tap on these things on an iPad or an iPhone, as well as on the web. And I wanted one design that I could use across the board. So these columns are all equal size. Various different things you can do in different ways. Anyway, moving back to here, I think, has anyone got any more questions? Does that answer your question? And is there any more detail on any of what I've just gone over?
Yeah. I had one other question, but I want to let other people try if they have.
We may need to move on. I'm just wary of the time. I reckon what we should do is, you let me know what you think, Goldmund. We do the workshop, complete it, then at the end, if we've still got time for more questions, we can do that. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I would say quickly scribble down. Anyone's got a question in mind right now, quickly write down on a piece of paper, and we'll try very quickly to cover those at the end. Right now, I'm going to jump straight in because we got about 23 minutes, something like that. Is that right? So, and really, it's a short exercise, and I'm probably only going to give you, what should we say, about 12 minutes. We'll give them to 10 to. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it gives you what? Is that? Yeah, it gives about 12 minutes. That's good. So your task is here. I'll put that back to present. Okay, so your challenge this afternoon, which is pretty simple, straightforward, is what I showed you before. It's a simple page from the presentation. So you want to mock up a concept card with a snappy title, a description, a sketch, and 5 key features. Now your context is, come up with a concept that's of value to both owners and customers of a restaurant that's affected by the pandemic. Does that make sense to everyone? Literally, you just got to come up with one idea. So we're going to, I don't know how Giles is going to break up the rooms, but whoever you end up in a room with, we're going to send you a spreadsheet with these items on them on the left-hand side. It's basically down the left. In fact, I can give you a quick preview of that. Let me just do that. Tell people what's expected of them. Blah, blah, blah. So this is your list, okay? So we've got various groups down the bottom. So you pick your own group, and all you've got to do is, in the context, you're going to come up with a snappy title, short description. Describe a sketch. You don't need to do a drawing. It doesn't matter. It's more about what does this need to convey to give people an idea of what it's about, and then 5 key benefits or features. Do you think you can do that? So it's basically, what is something that's, so I've got a restaurant. It could be anything, off the top of my head. Maybe it's a menu that you can see from anywhere, whatever. I'm not going to colour you a view. I picked this because I think it should be really easy to come up with a concept. So I'd probably start in chat and amongst yourselves, think of a few concepts, quickly trying to agree which of those you should pick, and then fill that out. And you've got 11 minutes starting from now. Okay.
Cool. I'll open up the rooms, guys. We've got even split, I think 3-on-3. What I'll try and do, if it's possible, I'll try and get actually what I'll do, I think loads of people have just left, so I'm actually going to put, do you want to do it as a group then? Because there's literally other people have left, and there's actually only just four now.
Okay, I mean that suits me. I'm happy to sit here. I'm going to leave you to talk about it for a moment. I want to go and refill my juice because my mouth is very dry. But I will, start coming up with discussing between yourselves there a concept. Try and narrow it down using the kind of mindset and thinking that we've discussed, rather than, you don't need to use the exact scale I used. Think about, well, what's going to be important to these people? Think about, what dimensions should we take into consideration for this? Okay, does that make sense? Can I leave you there for a moment?
Absolutely, yeah.
2 or 3 minutes.
So guys, because there's only about 4 or 5 of you here, we won't do it in breakout rooms. Feel free to kind of like get started together collaborating. So you can take all of your mics off and you can talk. That's fine. If people need to go, that's fine. That's why we're not going to do breakout rooms. Alex, don't worry about it. Cool, guys. I'll take my earphones out. I'll leave you to talk amongst yourselves.
Okay.
Cool. Who wants to share their screen?
Oh yeah, true.
Should I share mine? What do you think?
Click in the live group 1 and just.
Yeah, hang on. Oh, hang on. This will should do that. Cool. Okay. You guys tell me what to do.
Okay.
Okay. So we need a big title, but we don't know what the problems are, right? So first we have to come up with the problems.
Definitely. I guess retention is an issue, as in keeping people communicating and keeping people informed and making sure that they remain as a loyal customer. And
this is good. We're starting out with looking at a particular dimension of what problem you're trying to solve is what you're identifying here. So what's a key problem? Retention is one. Anything else?
Mm-hmm.
What about the fact that they can't actually? Oh, sorry about that. They can't actually feed people unless they're local, like in the restaurant. So you'd have to deliver the food to them some other way. Because during lockdown, you couldn't go to restaurants, so you had to get the food to your customers some other way.
That sounds good. Now, I'm going to throw in a suggestion here. Mm-hmm. In the interest of time, again, thinking about the ranking system that I talked about, if I was trying to get an answer to this quickly, what you're doing now is thinking quite free-form, and you're maybe going to think of all the problems that you could possibly have. Maybe what I might do here, We know we've got two key kinds of users, right? We've got owners in the question. We've got owners and we've got customers. And I would say, trying to, between yourselves, what's the top problem that a business owner's got? What's the top problem that a customer's got? So to start with, just as a starting place, maybe start there. Okay, so just come up with one for each. And again, it doesn't matter if you get the right one. It's about getting the conversation going. You can always go back and explore more later. Okay, over to you.
I guess owners would be retention, because after the post-pandemic, they'd want to make sure that. And then customers, maybe accessibility and availability of the product.
Yeah, that's good.
Finding different avenues. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to jump in again here, and I'm going to suggest, can we try and move the language away from business talk and into human talk? Okay, we're talking about retention, accessibility, and availability. Yeah, what's the problem? You know, my customers keep leaving me. That's the owner's problem is I can't seem to keep my customers. You know, speaking that language, because you're going to have all sorts of people at different levels. We don't want to use the language of our own departments. We want to use the language that is going to be familiar with everyone. Start there. You know, exactly. Think in human terms already. You're getting more creative. I'm already liking the look of this better. Or, do you see what I'm saying? You've rewritten it there. I can't go to. Okay, so then you're looking for what's the overlap between those two stories. As humans, we're used to, we like stories and we understand stories, and your mind will work more, will make more sense. It will make more sense of that problem if you put it in human terms and less in business jargon, if you like. Okay, I'll go over to you guys.
I don't know. Anyone else, Renisha, or you guys want to say anything? I don't know. I think in terms of the snappy title and stuff.
So the overlap is really related to the physical space, as in you want to go there, but there's limited number of seats and all of that. I suppose the overlap is kind of in that area.
Yeah.
That's right. Now, remember, I'm just going to say today, you probably have more time in the real world, but don't worry too much about how realistic and achievable this is. So just try and explore as much as you can and think about, you're coming up with an idea. Let's not worry if we have to get a permit from the council or anything for any ideas we've got, blah, blah, blah. We're looking for human stories. If you are slapping together a concept, that's what we're trying to get. We've got about 4 minutes left, and we want to have a filled-in card on the left.
Pressure.
Yeah. So you're looking for, and again, it's no problem. This is how you can generate concepts quickly. A lot of the key in here, and I'll give you a bit more time if I talk through it. We can go over a little bit, but it's important that we can overthink this stuff. We can take ages. And the idea of concepting, the same as with sketching in UX, is you're trying to quickly come up with a bunch of ideas, most of which you're going to throw away. So there's no value at all in over exploring any of them. So we're looking for really, I want you to get the idea of what is a concept card, and is somebody that if I take it out onto the street right now, is someone going to get what I'm talking about? Because that's the level of detail you need to be at. So you need a story that is a win for you and the business, that the business can do. We'll worry about that a little less today. You might find it useful in a group like this to put on hats. Maybe one of you can play the customer, one of you can play the user, one of you can play the business, someone else can play technology. This is another way to role play this sort of thing. And, you can all answer for each other, but, it helps separate that problem and get you all, utilizes the benefits of all of your thinking rather than just, make sure you're working in an aligned way that gets you all a useful result. Okay. So go ahead again.
A snappy title. Could you say, "I'm hungry," as in owners are hungry for customers and customers are hungry for.
So you want to start with the solution. Really, you've got a problem. Okay, so you're coming up with some kind of a solution first. So I would come up with what the solution is before you name it. Okay. So you've got a problem. What's a suggestion for how you might solve that in a way that is valuable for both parties?
What about rewarding? So the owner reward the customers, the loyal customers, in some way to keep them returning.
Okay, and in fact, what you've just written there is your description. Okay, so go into your short description and start writing in there over on the left. Get onto your card straight away. You'll be doing this with post-it notes in a workshop. But I like it. So there again, it doesn't matter. We're not looking for the right solution right now. We're looking for a solution to illustrate a concept, illustrate an idea, I'll say, so we don't confuse it. So in fact, if you move over, you can move on to the spreadsheet itself. Why are you filling out a sheet of paper when you've got it?
This is Figma. I'm using Figma. I'm not using the spreadsheet.
Oh, got you. Okay, no problem. Sorry. That's all right. I was thinking you've got your spreadsheet right there.
No. I can't do spreadsheets.
Fine. We won't start the ceremony. It doesn't matter. That's great. So you're going to reward customers for returning, maybe, or to keep them returning. Yeah, you're going to reward them for returning. Okay, and that kind of covers, you know, so the customers are rewarded and they return. So there's a potential solution, right? That's it. Okay, from there, what are 5 key benefits of it? So again, you can list now in order, and you can rearrange the order later. But what are 5 key benefits of that? So you're going to talk about what's good about that for the customer and the business.
Well, the customer's going to get presumably some deal, and either they'll have to pay less, or they'll get, you know, some sort of extra meal or something, whatever the
2
thing.
minutes. So just jot those down. Again, don't worry about. We're trying to get the general idea. So I'd say customer gets free stuff. Yeah. Then move on to your next one. Throw them out while someone's writing. Somebody else think of another one.
The owner gets returning customers.
So you've got your obvious stuff here that now maybe you can think of something more specific that you can maybe think, okay, what else does this, what new synergies does this create? You know what, if you haven't got 5 features, you don't have to come up with 5. You know, what is useful about this thing? What you're going to do with this is take it to people on the street and say, I've got 10 of these. Which of these do you think is a good idea? Or you're going to take it to different departments and they're going to want to understand it immediately. That's all you're doing here, right? We can make them look very fancy. You go to an agency, they'll have an illustrator make these look really glossy. But at the end of the day, this is all it is. I'll leave you to try and pick 2 more. If you don't use them all, it doesn't matter.
Sorry. Yeah, go for it. Cool. I was just writing visual memory memorable because, like for me, if you know, dishes are presented beautifully, that makes me want to come back, and it's something that it could be something that would get people to sort of recognize the brand or the restaurant.
So that's something interesting you're leaning into. So here's where you might be asking people to think about lenses. So, okay, this is valuable for the customer and the owner. How does this help us spread the word about our restaurant to people outside of that immediate circle? So you're talking about visual memory. So is there a way that you can do this that adds even more value to it? But maybe you put this on, you know, maybe you give them a bag that's got stickers on it. But you know what I mean? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But you're looking for ways of finding extra value in here that you can add into your idea.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, it means the customer has got your phone number next time. If it's a card, they've got your phone number in their wallet next time they want to make an order, for example. That's just something that, again, there's no right or wrong answers here. And you're going to be working with a group of lay people that aren't designers.
Yeah, so data retention would be one, like keeping details for future use.
How about advertising it, like on social media, something like that?
Exactly, that could be good. You know, you could have an online thing. You could have a league table of the customers that have been there the most. You know, I bring a competitive element into it. There's all sorts of things here. Again, watch out for. I don't mind you starting with data retention, but you're leaping straight there into market terminology. Ideally, this thing wants to look very plain English by the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, we here all know what data retention means. And keeping details for future use, but that's quite business focused, right? Like what is the benefit? It really wants to be from a user's perspective here. In a way, you're kind of putting that spin on it so everyone can get what the value is. You know, you can say what the benefit is for the business, but usually there's a way of expressing that in a way where the business value is implied. You've got to start with a product. To deliver a service, the first thing you've got to have is a service that people want. So it should be skewed towards, all of these things should be services you can provide that people actually want, that you can make money from. So it's almost implied just by putting it on the wall and saying it's a good idea that there is value for the business in it.
Cool. Anyone else? I've kind of. What about the title? We haven't come up with the title we're drawing.
Okay, that's great. So, but yeah, snappy title. You've got 1 minute really to finish, and then we want to be kind of getting on to finals in about 60 seconds. Yeah.
Yes. Keep them coming. Keep the dishes coming. Something like that. I don't know.
Keep them coming could be.
Yeah, I keep them coming sounds good. I like that right there. And this is, you know, as a facilitator, that's the kind of thing I'd be going around encouraging people, because someone go, oh, keep them going. I like it. Keep them coming. It says everything. I think you could literally launch that. It's really good.
Okay, cool.
So there you go. So, okay, who's going to pitch this to me? Pick a presenter, and you got 30 to 60 seconds to tell me what this thing is.
Renisha, I don't know. Do you want to try, or I don't know? Otherwise, I can go. I guess.
Yeah, you go.
Okay, I'll go. Right. So our concept is keep them coming. Basically, the idea is that we reward customers for returning to the restaurant. Here's a little sketch we drew, presumably. And
what's your sketch going to be of? We didn't talk about that. How are you going to illustrate it? Just and talk about what you want it to convey rather than what it looks like. Just think about that for a moment. We missed that stage. Quickly take another 30 seconds there to talk about that.
I think I would want it to convey some easy way of showing the food that you can get and the reward you get. So like, you know, if you have one meal, it suddenly bumps into like many meals because that's the benefit. Or if it's a half off or something, you would have some sort of visual like animation or something to show that. Something like beautiful. I don't know. That's
great. Well, obviously you haven't had a lot of time to deep dive on this, and you would have more time in reality, but you know, just chuck something in there into your box. Ideas for a sketch. What is it you want to convey? Yeah. Try to, okay, yeah, either's okay. Because you might give that over to your graphic designer and get them, or your illustrator, and get them to come up with something that they're inspired to create from the design. Okay, so buy one and get one free. Okay, so there you go. So finish your pitch.
Cool. So basically the idea is that the customers will get a benefit of a free meal or cash offer every time they use the app, which means that the owner will get returning customers every time they use the app, but it'll also make it easy for the customer to quickly get the food that they want, because they'll have all the data in the app, so it's kind of personalized, and it'll also give them beautiful images of the food, which will make it more memorable, and that'll be able to introduce others on social media to the actual app, and to maybe get a league table going, which will introduce a competitive element, and that'll also give you some reward, which will mean more people come back.
That's fantastic. Well done, everybody. Round of applause. Hola.
Nice one. Well done.
So I would say, just remember, and I'm going to wrap it on this. That's perfect. You've just come up with a concept. You can see how you could very quickly generate a whole load of these, and you can measure them on the basis of a whole lot of different dimensions that matter to different people. What you're trying to get is a fair balance that represents everyone. And remember, you're trying to come up with a concept that anyone can understand, that ultimately answers the question, why should I care? Yeah, so you bring this to me, you stop me on the street and say, excuse me, do you mind if I ask you a question? I've got 2 cards here. Which one's more appealing to you? Yeah, you could be doing that to your CTO. You could be doing it to the marketing department. You could be doing it in front of 100 people, or asking your mum. You know, it doesn't matter. But what you should have there is something that very clearly and simply, in no uncertain terms, says what this is. And it shouldn't be department driven. So when you're talking about, data and stuff like that, well, that's the kind of thing data people worry about. You know, if you're talking about retention, that's what the retention team think about. You know, you want to bring this up to a level that it's universal and that it's in very human language that everyone can clearly understand. We're very nearly out of time. Has today been of value to people, and how have you found the session?
Super valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been
absolutely.
great. Thank you.
Brilliant. Are there any questions? Have we got time to overrun for a few minutes at all, Giles, or does it have to bang on 8?
Well, if you want to stay and ask, you can. You don't have to, don't feel obliged to, because we only say 8 o'clock. So if you guys need to go, you can go. If someone wants to ask questions, you've got Goldmund as long as he's available.
I just had the other one question. I don't know if you guys have any others. Do you want to go? Questions?
I was just wondering if you can recommend some books on leading workshops and things like that.
Okay, yeah, I will be killed by my very good friends Adam and Marcus if I don't recommend this is Service Design Thinking, and this is Service Design Doing. They've pretty much written the book on service design, and it's greatly ironic because I used to play music with these guys in Germany years ago. And I heard about this book and I ordered it, put it on pre-order, and I was like, I've got to get this book. It's the book on service design. And I only found out much later that it'd been written by these two very good friends of mine. And they're now running massive workshops on this stuff. They're very, like, literally my best friends out there. And is that you guys? Because I saw their names on the thing and I was like, it was crazy anyway. So they've got a little company. They run Web Innovation Jam. I should know the names of everything to plug it better. Adam will call me, but it's Adam St. John, Marcus Hornis, and you've got a third guy that works for them, Mark Strickthorn. But if you look up, the original book was This is Service Design Thinking, which is a series of articles about service design. They've then followed it up with a book called This is Service Design Doing, which Adam and Marcus have contributed heavily to. I think Marcus, I won't get into the detail of who's who in it, but that is kind of the book on it. Also, you could look at game storming, which is, there's books on that subject talking about how to, I've got things like the elevator pitch, I think, are in there, that I've alluded to in today's workshop. My portfolio use of that vision statement. It's really, you hear it often called an elevator pitch. And it's in the same way as your concept. You're going, if you find yourself in the elevator with the CEO of the company and you've got your idea, how do you quickly, you're going to lose his attention very quickly if you're not snappy. So it gives you a sentence structure that helps you to say, Gmail is a web-based email service that, doesn't have a storage limit. That's better than that doesn't have the spam that Hotmail is, and we're going to call it Gmail. You're looking for a snappy little sentence that covers all the bases. What is it? What's it called? Who's it for? What type of thing is it? What's its unique selling point? And again, you're looking for, why should I care? Your concepts should answer, why should I care? And they should jump out to people. The image is there to help convey what the thing's for. Simple as that. So books wise, again, get out there and do stuff. I spent years trying to read all the right books. What I found, and thinking I wasn't ready, and you can become a kind of a research and study junkie, where you think, after I read this one book, I'll be ready. After I take this one more course, and I'll be ready. The thing that's taught me the most is just taking on jobs I wasn't sure if I could do yet, and just making sure I did them and delivered them. Any expansions on that or further questions around that?
I just had the one from earlier saying, do you let people prep before the workshops? Like, do you have them sort of say, look, come prepared, have a think about these things, or that was the question.
It depends it depends what you're trying to achieve. I would say in most cases, you want a balance between people turning up, having done all the thinking. You want it to be kind of free form, and you want everyone to have an idea. I suppose you would loosely say, have a think about, what are the key, you might actually do a pre-workshop where it's just about generating ideas. What we did there in the case that I've presented today, we already had a bunch of concepts. I've kind of fudged it a little there just to kind of illustrate the idea that we could do it all in one day, but actually we'd come in with those steps and phases already done in a previous workshop or on another day. you know. So you can say, if everyone could pick your top 10 list, a snappy description, but what you don't want is to have people come in with pages and pages of information and a whole presentation that they think they're going to present. They're coming in with concepts. So at most, say, have a think, what are the top 10 things that would be useful, that you think would be useful for the business? And what are the top 10 things you think would be useful for your department? It's quite useful to give people that voice sometimes, because you ask them to be fair, they won't necessarily be. You can also say, what are the top 10 things for the user? Giles, you look like you're, are you trying to wrap things up, or are you talking?
No. Sorry,
Right.
I've been getting I've got emails coming through at the same time.
Okay. Oh, cool. I can see your lips are kind of moving.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sure what's going on. So yes, overall, just remember what you really want is that balanced view of what's good for everybody. What you're likely to get is a lot of what's good for them and their department. So what can be useful is to give them a place to park their thoughts, because what you'll see a lot of facilitators doing that I don't really like is just go, oh yeah, that's great, let's just stick that on the wall, and they feel dismissed. People know when they're getting kind of written off. I like to gather any information that there is out there, and I welcome it. We say, look, well, the focus today is this, but if you kind of shut people up, it's still playing on their minds, and it doesn't free them up to get creative and think about what you want them to talk about. To say, okay, come to me with tell me your top 3 things for the company, top 3 things for the user, top 3 things that really help you out. So then you've given them a place to discuss each particular. You've got me a bit to moan about their department or fight their corner, but at the same time, your ultimate aim then is to throw all of this into a big pot and get everyone as a company to agree. Now, what should we do? You're moving it away from what do I want, what do I need, what do I think people want, and what's actually useful, and what does it make sense to do. And with that, any further questions? I think we can probably wrap up with that. I would say I'm on LinkedIn and whatever else. Feel free to, if you've got follow-up questions, I can get quite busy, so I can't necessarily answer instantly, but feel free to add me there, ask me more questions, send questions if you like, collate them to Giles and send them over. But to be honest, just add me on LinkedIn. I'm out there. And, you know, always, once you are out there and working, remember I'm always free and available for work. So, you know, hire me and there's my sales. I work with a larger collective called Digital Works Group, and we have a whole number of consultants out there that we can supply out to the market for various different things. Come and check us out, check out our webpage. Anything else, or should we leave it there for the night?
All good.
Thanks for your
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening.
Goldmund, thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was incredible. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that, and that does conclude the program. Goldmund, that was a great one to end on. I hope you found that useful. And yeah, thank you for being generous enough to, you know, share your LinkedIn. If you've got any questions, send them over to him. If not, email me, any of the speakers that we've spoken to or had delivered. Send me emails and I can try and get in contact with them and see if they can answer anything for you. But guys, thank you so much for staying right till the end. So good to see you all. But have a good one, okay, guys? Thanks very much. Cheers, Goldmund.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.